No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about two stories that have happened really within the last month or month and a half, and the contrast in the outcome of them is huge. While the beginnings of the stories both are very similar and started out the same way. Now, before I get into those specific cases, I just kind of want to talk about this in general. Obviously, many of you are aware that criminals generally tend to prey on those that they perceive are weak, not that are necessarily weak, but that they perceive are weak. So generally, the elderly, women, smaller statured males, etc., tend to be targets for assaults and robberies more so than large, sort of military age, athletic looking men. It's just the nature of the beast and just how it is. It's that way for humans. It's that way for, for a lot of the animal kingdom as well. It's just the way predators behave, and make no mistake, criminals are predators. So just a personal story here. When I first met my wife, she wasn't anti-gun by any means, not at all. I really honestly think she hadn't thought too much about it. But it was a big transition for me and her to get her to carry a firearm at all times. She would, every now and then leave it. And I, not to nag or anything, but would, be like, babe, you got to carry a gun. And she'd be like, oh, I've been fine for, however many years now, and never needed it. So, it's not that important, blah, blah, blah. And I always stress to her that, you are a woman walking around by yourself. You are a target. Particularly, many of you are aware my wife, is a relatively attractive woman, which just makes her a target even more so. So at any time, these attacks can happen. And these two cases are perfect examples of it. The first case we're going to talk about here was a Domino's pizza delivery driver, a woman. She was out in California, so you can just imagine there. I believe that's actually the Bay Area as well. You can imagine there the gun laws are not exactly all that friendly, and Domino's does have a policy prohibiting their drivers from carrying firearms. So she was delivering a pizza, not exactly at a bad time or anything like that. Again, these attacks can happen at any time. It was 11:20 in the morning that she was delivering this pizza. Allegedly, and very likely at this point, it seems to be that the evidence all points to it, a 17-year-old male abducted her at gunpoint. So basically, the story, which you're going to see happens in the second story again. She pulls up to the place, the address given for the delivery for the pizza. A male walks over to her, 17-year-old male in this case, presents a gun, forces her into the vehicle, and takes her to a secluded area and rapes her for 2 hours, repeatedly, over and over again. Eventually, he lets her go, thankfully, so she has her life at least, reports the crime, the guy's arrested. So, as a pizza delivery person, someone walking up to you when you get to an address is not at all out of the ordinary. It's a very normal situation, and things happen very quickly. When that person is in your space, they present a firearm, and then it's a very quick, what are you going to do? And if you don't have a firearm, a lot of times there's not a whole lot you can do. So she unfortunately became a victim that day. So a few things to think about there. Number one, California's laws probably prohibited her from doing it. Again, I know they do have some permits in California, and it really depends on a lot of different factors, but more difficult for sure. Her corporate policy prevented her from doing it. And obviously she didn't have a firearm that day, unfortunately. And she became a victim that day. Story number two comes from Papa John's pizza delivery driver. Again, we have a female driver being called out to a location. In this case, you can see the picture here. It was a relatively remote location in Georgia, in a suburb of Atlanta. So we have more liberal concealed carry laws in Georgia. And this young lady was prohibited from carrying a firearm during her delivery and employment periods of time anyway at Papa John's, but she chose to carry the firearm. So when she pulled up to the address where the call was at, two men approached her. One of them, after engaging her verbally, pulls out a firearm. At that point, the driver pulled her firearm out and shot him in the face. Bravo to her. At that point, the guy who got shot in the face led on the side of the road. The other person who was with him jumped in the vehicle. I believe it was a Honda Accord, took the vehicle and fled the scene. Now, the driver fled the scene as well, the original delivery driver. Obviously, she was able to get help, summoned the authorities. The guy who got shot in the face was arrested. You see his picture here. So, a couple things to think of there. Again, Georgia, more liberal concealed carry laws. Again, though, Papa John's did prevent her, at least through corporate policy, from carrying a firearm. Now she chose to ignore that corporate policy. Again, I applaud that. Sort of something to think about there is, in this case, I bet if you asked this young lady if she was glad that she carried her firearm that day, and even if she got fired, would she still do it again? I'd be willing to bet she'd say yes. So by all means, I wouldn't tell someone to break a law. If your law prohibits you from carrying a firearm, that's a decision, you all have to make out there as citizens. But in my opinion, you can ask this young lady, like I was saying. Also, several different convenience stores over the last few years have had similar things, like 7-Eleven store owner, or excuse me, store clerk, who shot someone and was fired for having the firearm at work. I bet that person, actually, I know that person, I've seen the interview, would tell you they were glad they did it, and that way they're alive to tell their story. And guess what? You can get another 7-Eleven job, you can get another Papa John's delivery job, or equivalent thereof, but you still have your life, and you didn't have to go through a horrific ordeal like the young lady in the first story did. So those stories really perfectly illustrate how the presence of a firearm dramatically changes the outcome of the situation. And really, that's the point I always try to drive home with my wife when we first started dating and eventually got married. And I really just kind of want to, for those of you that are having the same thing, have someone in your life that you're trying to convince that they need to, be armed at all times, these two stories are a very good reason, I guess you could point to an example why that is. Even if someone's telling you that you can't do it, if there's a corporate policy where they work, who cares? Ignore the policy. You will not care if you get fired and you had to use your firearm to defend your life. I assure you, it's just not the case. Employment's not that important. Your life, your body, all of that is that important. So that's about it, guys. I just wanted to share the story after reading about it, that the stark contrast is just so apparent here, and it really is a lesson that hopefully we can learn, and some of you or your family members or loved ones will learn after watching this video, and they won't have to learn it firsthand. That's about it, guys. If you have any questions, you can always post below in the comment section. If you have any comments, you can also post them below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page as always. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.